Welcome back. My name is Ivica Cartello. You are watching React School for total beginners. Counter, a Redux example, one counter. I created empty folder 407. In Visual Studio Code, open 407 folder, empty folder. Terminal, new terminal. Get started, close. Open this address, copy this address of repository, or click here. Back to Visual Studio Code terminal, 407 folder open, and type git clone and paste address, enter. Open folder 405. Type npm I type npm start click increment and look at what happened. Decrement, okay, now we go to script explanation. Redux explanation on example counter. Look at this diagram. Look at this architecture pattern, Redux pattern, until you remember it. Print it on the paper or draw on the paper by hand and take on your table. When you look at that script, and my description of script, you you follow it on this architecture diagram. First of all, we must create a store. I open a folder app in src folder, and in that app folder I created store.js. Store.js, store is an object what take care about state. State is inside object store. State is sub-object of object store. And here you look at in script for store, never see word state, only store. Import configure store. It is one option. It is one function. What we need for create store. It is configure store. It is store. There is three functions: configure store, important for store is configure store, dispatch, and get state. Get state, what we write here, console log, store, get state. Get state is a method of store by that we can see state. We can access state inside the store. Again, configure store, dispatch, and get state. Import configure store from Redux toolkit. Import counter reducer, what will we see later. Counter reducer from counter slice. Here is a feature counter slice. And we create and export variable or object variable store equal configure store. Configure store is a method what creates store. Because of that it is important for store. Create store, and creation of store means create object. Because of that we have here curly brackets, and parameter of configure store is object, and in curly brackets in that curly brackets we have a reducer column. It is member of object reducer column, and inside the reducer we have again curly brackets counter column counter reducer, closed curly brackets, closed store curly brackets, and closed brackets of parameters. Console log, it is only for our control that by method get state, method of store, we can see state. Again, store is object created by configure store, and that object, if it is our first contact with store, with Redux, inside that object there is a reducer, member reducer, and we have only one reducer now, counter. It is a member of that object, and the name value of counter reducer is name counter reducer. Counter reducer is reducer what we create by help of counter slice, what we will explain after store. Okay. Again, store is object what take care about state. It is JavaScript, and I make it in folder app, because Redux is something for all application of React, for all component of React. And app folder means store is for all app, something outside of React application. And state, in store, and in state would be all state from components. Now in this application would be all state, but in next future application we will see how we manipulate with local, and how we decided what is a local state, and manipulate and stay and rest it in the local component, and how we decided what would be state for React, a global state for all component. Redux is for global state, and store is object what take care about state, global state. All states inside that state, inside store. But we will see that all in the future by example. Now, all state in this application we set as global state. For example, that's very simplest example of Redux, the simplest possible example for introduce beginners in Redux. It is store. And now we must connect that store with the React application. React application. Let's go index.js. And index.js import React, import create root. Create root from, you look at React DOM client. Create root is a function would create bed for our virtual JavaScript application, for our virtual React application. Create bed, create a root context inside what will be runtime of JavaScript application, JavaScript React application. In create root, import provider, you look at it is from React Redux, because provider connect, it is element what wrap around Redux and React. Because of that, here it is React Redux package. And the provider is React element what wrap React Redux together. With provider all is possible. Is possible connection and communication between React Redux. And we have our store, just scripted store from App Store, and import our top component from our React application, import app. And here it is, constant container, we declare object container. And we declare object container, it is get document get element by ID. That element, name of that element is root. When you look at source view of every React application, you will see that div named root. HTML element div named root. And because of that, we declare constant root, because a container is not enough. That container equal HTML get element by ID. Container is something connected with HTML. But now we must create object what connect container with Redux. And it is object root equal declaration of object root is equal instantiation is create root. It is because of that it is important create root function, parameter of which is container. And you look at that connection between HTML take by name of HTML element, create object container, and create object root by function create root and parameter container. And it is connect HTML with virtual runtime of JavaScript application. It is connection, and our JavaScript application runtime is inside object root. And here is, because of that, root, there is a method render, and we start render process of rendering start by this, and inside render method we have as parameter of that render, it is script where we have important is this provider element, provider React element, provider open tag, provider close tag, and inside that is our topic component app React element. App React element is topic component, topic element inside our React application. It is all wrapped inside strict mode, React strict mode. Okay, this provider is very important, and the properties of this React element provider properties is store and equal store, property store equal in curly brackets means that store exists, and of course it is this, and it is that what we script script before. Okay, it is description of connect script, what we need, script for connection, Redux script with React script. App.js, it is component in React. We have import counter. It is next what we'll see. And import React from React. Function app return counter. When it is only one, we don't need div. Return counter. And now we can go to see script of counter React element. Here it is, when we see script like this, it is element, React element. But when we see script like this, counter, open feature, open counter, when we see script of counter, it is component. We can call that component. Import use selector, use dispatch. Use selector and use dispatch is hooks. It is a function what we need for connect Redux with connect store with components of React. Use selector, use dispatch. It is hooks. Hooks, very important for function component, not class, but for function component. And it is import from React Redux because they are we use them for connect React with Redux. How you will see in script. And again, import increment, decrement, select count. It is import from counter slice, and we spoke about that in next after this. Increment, decrement, select count. We will see what is this counter slice. Export, and now we have we script component counter, function component counter. In curly brackets is all script means counter. And at first we declare variable count, object count, and we declare it by hook use selector, and parameter is select count. Here I will say that we will see what is select count, and use selector, only use selector can take state from Redux and give it component. Component here is component counter. Use selector. Only hook use selector have access to Redux and to React. And select count is state. We will see. It is state. It is value of state, concretely value of state. And it means that constant count, declared as named it count, it is object variable count. Now it is the name of our state equal instantiation is use selector and parameter select count. It means that use selector take from Redux, from store, take state, add it to object select count, variable count, select count, and use selector go to can go to Redux and take select count. Select count is state, and take that state and give to variable. It is a value of variable count, of object count. Constant dispatch equal use dispatch. In this declaration, in this statement, we declare dispatch and instantiate use dispatch. By that, dispatch is a method of store. Method of store what can access variable, can take can listen to event, and when an event happen, take action of that event and bring that action to store, concretely to reducer. And in return we have a visible part of our component, and we will see button. Here is a button decrement, and HTML h1. We have a count. It is value. It is our state. In curly brackets, it is this count. It is state. What coming from Redux. And we have button increment. Again, on click is JavaScript event, and here it is properties of button HTML element properties on click when and that on click when happened on click on that button, we will have this arrow function. That arrow function parameter is nothing, empty parameter, and in body of arrow function we have expression dispatch, it is method of store, and parameter of that method is increment function increment. We will see what it means, and it is a name on button, and it's all. Now we go to see counter slice. It is reducer creation. Import create slice. Create slice coming from Redux toolkit. Redux toolkit. And it is the last version how we make create script Redux. Most simple than before. And create slice is a function what create all about reducer and action. At first, for reducer, we need two input, state and action, because first time when we coming when we open a React application, we don't produce any state with our action. We don't click on any button, but reducer need to have two input. And because of that, for that initial state, we created here, we declare object initial state equal, in curly brackets, we concretely say it is object curly brackets, initial state is object, and now that object have only one member value and equal 0. Here it is. First time 0. That 0 is value, initial value. Go back. And after that, we create object counter slice, and in that counter slice, export constant counter slice, it is our script about action and reducer. And export counter slice equal create slice function. Create slice function, what we import from Redux toolkit. Create slice for parameter. There is curly brackets. It is all inside curly brackets. It means it is object, and that object always there is a name of reducer, future reducer, and we named it counter. You look at this, it is quote under quote, counter name, it is string, it is under quote. And of course, here it is initial state. Name of reducer. Initial state will be input. It is input in reducer. And other and action reducers have action, and action is object. And we have here is all reducers is combine reducer. Can have more reducers, but in this situation we have only one reducers named counter, and that reducers there is action increment, and when would be that action increment must give two input, state and action, but here is only state. There is, we don't write action, comma action, because action it is always what is value, and here in this situation we know value. We instantiate value, state value here plus 1. Plus equal 1 means that when we click on the button increment, our state count will be up for 1. Every click up for 1. And because we know that, we don't need second parameter here, action. And we have only state, and in body of that arrow function we have state.value plus equal 1. I must say here that it is not immutable kind, it is mutable kind. Mutable changes, but create slice coming from Redux tool have inside Imer library, and that Imer library take care about immutable. That Imer library will this statement convert this mutable statement convert in immutable statement. It means that Imer library will create copy of state, and that copy of state make up for 1, make step for 1, add 1. That copy of state add number 1. Same is for decrement. Decrement action means also state, arrow function, parameter state, only state, not action, and in curly brackets state.value would be -1. -1. It is also a mutable expression, but Imer library will create copy of state, and that copy -1 will be -1. And it is immutable kind of changes state. State must be changes only immutable. because of bugs. A lot of bugs would be if we don't strictly take that rule. But here is visible that create slice and the new Redux toolkit, Redux toolkit, have less job, take us less job than before. In former version of Redux. And here we have a constant declaration of object increment decrement equal counter slice actions, and export constant declare select count. It is equal of function state, parameter state, and it is state.counter value. State.counter value. It will be 0, 1, 2. It is state. It is our name of state counter. We will see in the future that state can have as we want, as we need, substate, we can call that, but state.counter.value go to select count. And that state in this slice, create slice, in this part of our script, that select can take only hook use selector, can take this and bring it to component, and we will see that on the screen. From Redux to component. Export default counter slice reducer. Select count will go by help of use selector, go from Redux, from state, Redux state to component, but on the counter, on the component, there is dispatch method, what waiting, what listen for event. When event happen, take increment or decrement, depend about button, and the take action increment or decrement to Redux dispatch take action from component to Redux to reducer, and reducer have action for input and state, have state, old state and action for input, and from that two input, state and action, create one output, and that one output is state, new state. Reducer must change state on in a mutable kind, in mutable rule, because that there is input former state and action what describe what to do, that two input state and what to do, a reducer by immutable kind, and we see that is by help of Eimer library, we produce one output and it is new state. Two input and one output, it is like a function reducer, reduce, and because like JavaScript function reduce, and because of that, name is reducer. It was counter, the simplest possible example. Take it like example 1. Next video will be example 2. Thank you for watching this video.